Donnie and Dolly. The team is supported by ableauctions.ca. Closing your business? We can help.
It is Monday. All of our guests today, including Elliot, standing by, brought to you by Basant Motors. May Day! It's May Days at Basant Motors. Huge promotions. Greatest selection. Check out why Basant Motors is consistently the number one rated dealer in the Lower Mainland. Visit them online at basantmotors.com. NHL Draft Lottery takes place tonight. Only one playoff game tonight. Edmonton versus Vegas, tied at 1. Here to talk about that and more from Hockey Night in Canada and the 32 Thoughts podcast, Elliot Friedman. Elliot, thanks for doing this, sir. How are you?
I'm good. How are you guys doing today?
Lovely. Very well, very well. Waiting with great anticipation. The Canucks moving up 11 spots to win the draft lottery. So there's that. What franchise, there's San Jose, Columbus, Anaheim, Chicago. Which franchise needs an injection of star power the most?
Don, who doesn't?
Good one.
Who wouldn't want this guy? Who doesn't need this guy? Mm-hmm. Even if I got to tell you, for me, I don't really have a huge rooting interest here. I think it's great for us at Sportsnet if he ends up in Vancouver or Montreal. I think that would be awesome for us, and I'm sure our network is openly cheering for it. And if there's a way we can fix it, we've probably tried it. You wonder, I think he'd be great in a place like Philadelphia, strong hockey market, but where, none of these teams is going to say, none of these teams is going to say, no, we don't need a guy like that. Every single team can use him. And, even as good as Bedard is, there's a couple of other really good players in this draft, but he's the guy. And tonight at 5 o'clock your time, between 5 and 5:30 Vancouver time, somebody's entire organization is going to be supercharged. There's going to be people buying tickets. It's going to affect what you do this summer. It's going to change your immediate, watch your odds change next year. Not necessarily to win the Stanley Cup, but just to make the playoffs or everything. There is a franchise tonight that is going to be completely reinvigorated with this kid. And everybody who can get him could use him.
I don't have a problem with it, unlike other people in this studio. Is there any way to make the draft lottery program a better television show?
Well, what's your problem here, Dollar? What are you upset about?
It was more Ryan. I think he wants
Ryan.
He wants all mascots in the studio. I say it is what it is. You got cards flipping over. Nobody's turning away.
Yeah.
No, you know what? I do think the team should have representation there. Merrick and I actually had a big thing on our podcast about it this morning. I do think the GMs should be there. If not the GMs, I think they should have maybe a fun representative from their franchise. I mentioned it on now they don't want to go because they don't want their faces seen when they don't get the pick. And Merrick in particular called them soft on the pod today. So I would advise everybody to check that out. But I think the team should have a representative there. I think it's important. I think it's about the way that your league is portrayed. It's about the show. And I think all of that matters. So that's one way I think you could make it better television. To be honest, I think this sells itself. It's the cards opening. It's seeing the logo. I don't think you need a lot more to sell it. But I do think the team should have a representative there. And, the one thing I remember is I've never had an angrier conversation with Trevor Linden than I did after one of those lotteries. I went to him after and he was furious. And, he didn't want to talk. He just said, those are the odds. There's an 80% chance you're not going to win or a 75% chance you're not going to win. But he couldn't stand that the Canucks consistently got bad lottery luck. So I understand why those GMs and stuff don't want to be there, but I think they should be there.
You'd think Trevor would be used to that as a longtime member of the Canuck organization.
Yeah, no kidding.
People are competitive, Don. People are competitive. I know. They want to win.
Elliot, I want to ask you about Gerard Gallant. This is the second coach. They said the exit player meetings played a role. just like Sutter. What's going on here? Like, are these, regardless of his great success, are players just going in and ripping the coach and the coach is getting fired nowadays?
I think that was a much bigger thing in Calgary than it was in New York. I think in Calgary that absolutely did happen, and they realized the situation was untenable. And I think I heard even Sutter, when he heard what the players said, recognized that it wasn't something that was going to be able to continue.
Right.
I think in New York it's a little bit different. I don't know if it was as widespread, but I do think a couple of key players. Like, I don't know that these two players in particular had negative things to say about Gallant. I don't know. But I do know that they were very concerned about the playoffs Panarin and Lafreniere had. And I think that is going to be paramount in terms of who the next coach is. Is it someone who can reach those two players? I think New York, I think with the owner there, they thought about replacing Gallant during the year. I think it was in the cards. I think it was going to happen anyway. Is it possible the exit interviews only made that more likely? Maybe. I think there's a chance of that, but I think that one was going to happen. I think in Calgary, Sutter was always coming back until the exit interviews, and those ones had a much bigger impact on the coaching decision than they did in New York. Like, Rick, I will say this. One thing now is that players are more vocal than they've ever been. Maybe not publicly, but they are privately, and they say their piece. And I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. People should say what's on their mind. I think, but 20, 30, 40 years ago, players just kept their mouths shut and did whatever the organization told them to do. That's not the way it is anymore.
Hey, Elliot, there was a story in Vancouver about the Canucks don't have much cap space for July 1st. It's really tough moving bad contracts. Do you think it could still be done? I know July 1st isn't too far away. The Millers, the Bessers, the Myers, the Garland. I mean, it's tough to move them, but is there a chance it can happen?
I think there's always a chance. It always, like, what, Rick, like, one of the things that you always forget is, first of all, there's always teams who are willing to be brokers, depending on what you're willing to do. There are some teams that are not going to try to win next year, so you can call them, and it depends on what they're willing to do to help you. So that's number one. But the other thing is, and you always forget this, is just look now, like, for example, here in Toronto, where the city is burning down today, like when teams that lose in the playoffs, then they start to say, okay, what do we want to do here? How does this change the way we're going to do things? And I think you're going to see that. I think teams that either miss the playoffs and still want to contend, or teams that get knocked out in the playoffs and want to change their mix, suddenly they start looking around and saying, okay, we weren't here a month ago, but now we're here. And what does that mean? And I wouldn't be surprised if the Canucks are going to have some of those teams that just miss the playoffs, or some of those teams that make the playoffs or get knocked out earlier than they want. They open up possibilities because their situation changes. So I always think there's a willingness of teams out there to make moves, to change their mix. And some of those situations become apparent during and after the playoffs that didn't exist before. And I think that's going to happen. I think there's going to be teams out there that say, well, we didn't have it with this group. What else have we got out there? And maybe they like something Vancouver's got. I think there are going to be routes here for the Canucks to find. They just have to, be a little bit patient and see how everything plays out.
You alluded to the Toronto series down 0-3 to Florida. Nylander, Tavares, Matthews, Marner, 0 goals in those 3 games combined. And you and Kevin talked about this yesterday. Is there a chance 1, 2, maybe all of them are injured, Elliot? And how much heat are they taking?
Well, the answer to your heat is they're taking enough. It would be very easy to boil water with all the heat they're taking. Put it that way, Don. Like I said, the city's ablaze today. And the one thing that amazes me, Don, is that if you would have told me that 9 days after they broke their first-round prison curse, that the fans would be as angry as they are today, I wouldn't have believed it. Like, I certainly thought Florida could beat Toronto. I thought it would have been in 6 or 7 hard-fought games. But, 9 days after they beat Tampa, everybody's furious again. And I never saw that coming. Look, nobody's healthy at this time of year. I think some of these guys are probably battling something. We'll find out when it's all over. But still, like, what I think the thing is, Don, is that when you look at Edmonton right now, win or lose, win or lose, McDavid and Draisaitl are bringing it every night. And you look at New Jersey, win or lose, Jack Hughes is bringing it every night. And, I think one of the reasons that the Sedins became so beloved in Vancouver is win or lose, they learn to bring it every night. And I think that's what fans understand. Like, they understand sometimes you're going to win. They understand sometimes you're going to lose. But do your players bring it? And if you bring it in a market like Vancouver or a market like Toronto, people are going to love you forever. And I think that's the thing that, like, they had 34 points, those four guys, in 6 games against Tampa. They were incredible. But they won't tolerate, like, a no-show like last night. And that's why everybody is so upset here.
Who starts in goal in Game 4 for Toronto?
Well, they said today that Samsonov needs an MRI. So I got to say, Rick, like, when you need an MRI, that says to me that you're in trouble health-wise. If he can play, he's going to play. I think Murray has indicated to them, I've heard, that he wants to play and is happy to start, but I think it's going to be Wall. He didn't do anything last night. That wasn't his fault. He didn't. Like, he comes in, he gets a power play right away, a breakaway seconds later. He stops to clear on another breakaway, and Reinhart just skates through 5 guys on the winning hole. I mean, what are you going to do? I don't blame the kid on that one, and they do really like him, so I got to think he's the guy.
Elliotte, we'll talk to you in a couple of weeks. Thanks so much. I know you're busy.
All right, guys. Have a great week. Take care.
You bet. Elliotte Friedman from Hockey Night in Canada and the 32 Thoughts podcast.